Okay, I wanted to just briefly go over using the Olfa Box cutter. Um, there will be, or there, I believe there is going to be a video that is produced by the School of Art on using box cutters, but we need to get started using these, so I'm just going to do an abbreviated little demo with the box cutter. Anyways, um, you should wear safety glasses whenever you're using the box cutter because you just never know if the blade could snap off and fly into your eyes. So you should always have safety glasses on first. Okay. This is a very simple tool. I'm sure a lot of you have probably used a similar box cutter, maybe not the Olfa, but it actually is one of the most dangerous tools out there. People almost, well, not almost everybody, but a lot of people have cut themselves with these tools, mostly because I think they get really comfortable with them and they're working late and long hours and rushing, and they cut themselves. So I want to go over a few things to you know, minimize and hopefully um, you know, completely reduce the chances of you getting hurt with this tool. So on the side is an adjustable lever that you turn counterclockwise, and that loosens up the blade to allow you to slide it forth so that it is protruding and sticking out, and then you can cut it. The blade is on the inside. The handle kind of flares out, and the blade flares out. So the side that is the widest is the side with the blade. You're going to notice um, with this tool that the blade has these little scores on the surface of it. That is not decorative. That is designed so that the blades are designed so they can be broken off and you will have a sharp point at the end of it. So I say that for two reasons. One, you always kind of want to make sure that the blade is only protruding the length from, let me just get something to point here. You only need the depth slightly more than the material that you're cutting, right? So in our case, we're going to be mostly cutting 5/16 board, so it's protruding way too much, way more than necessary to cut this stock. So for cutting 5/16, you only need it really protruding maybe about that much, okay? And then you just have to be mindful of, I don't know if in the video you can see it, but the housing for the blade has this kind of angled return, so you just have to, when you're cutting, be aware of that return, right? Or else if the blade is too angled, then not enough of the blade is going to be sticking out to cut through the material. So, okay, just really quickly, some basics here. So I undo this to change the blade, and I believe you've only been given one blade. You pull it out and can set it down like that. You can see there's a little notch and there's a hole in the blade. So that little peg goes through the hole when you're putting the knife back together. If you notice how I kind of picked that up, I kind of pressed it down, blade down against the surface, and picked it up from the back, okay? Now, if this blade was dead, what I would call dead, where the blade is completely worn out and it's not cutting through the material, then you'd want to, Olfa actually sells replacement blades. They come in a packet like this, and you'd want to put it away because you don't want this sitting out on the table or on a surface where people couldn't see it. But this blade is okay, so I'm gonna put it back and slide this back into the housing of the knife and push it forward, and then I can adjust this to tighten it, to secure it. Okay, you always want to make sure that this is turned so that it doesn't turn anymore, and then you know that you have a pressure tightened blade, so this is not going to slide. You don't want to be using this with this loose, right? Because then the blade will be sliding. Okay, so a few more things. And Olfa makes different different knives. There are thicker ones and there are smaller ones. Similar principles. The material we're going to be cutting in this class is foam core. Okay, so it's 3/16 inch thick, and I've already mentioned that that you need to be aware of that thickness to be aware of how much the blade is sticking out. So I'm going to show you this. Like, you should never be using this knife with this sticking out much further like this than you need, right? That's where, when you're making your cut, if you're putting too much pressure on the blade could bend and it could snap at one of those score lines. Okay, this is something that you absolutely have to do with your safety glasses on, and I would urge you to do this if you do need to break off a section of your knife. You should probably do this outside and make sure there's no one around you. Have your safety glasses on, and you need a pair of pliers. Okay, so this is a needle nose set of pliers. I think actually a flat pair of pliers would be better, and you just simply, well, actually you have to look at the back of the blade, and you look at the front of the blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and I'm just going to snap it. Okay, so I've got the blade in the pliers. Okay, and so I want to make sure I can see which side of that has the sharpened edge, and I'm going to put that into my little dead blade box. And now this knife is broken off. It's very sharp. Okay, so I'm going to retract that. You always put it back. Never leave the blade sticking out when you're not using it. So I'm going to return that to where it was. So most of you with this project are going to be kind of, making strips and cutting material. I think that you're going to find that the board, you're going to need a cutting mat. Okay, if you do not have a cutting mat, I know a lot of you do, because people in illustration and kind of 2D, if you've taken Foundation 2D or even Foundation 3D, sometimes you have a cutting mat. A cutting mat will protect your table. If you do not have a cutting mat, I recommend trying to find a board or something really smooth that you can put down on your tabletop surface, because this blade will cut right through this material and it will cut into your tabletop. So you need something that is a protective surface underneath your material. These cutting mats are really fantastic. They have many applications. In the future, they're a really good investment. You can cut out things for printmaking, you can cut out things for collage, you can use X-Acto blades. They're helpful for laying out grids. They're helpful for folding paper, for working on, making molds. They're a good investment. We could not get everybody cutting mats in this class. There were just too many things to acquire, so you're going to have to get resourceful. Okay, so here's the thing with these blades. So you always want it to be kind of protruding the thickness of the material that you're cutting, maybe slightly over. You're going to need a straight edge of some kind. Okay, it's kind of better if you have one that is metal, because wood, sometimes the blade will cut into it. The biggest thing with Olfa knives and box cutters is people, I think, have a tendency to kind of let me return this back in so the blade's not sticking out. People have a tendency to kind of get sloppy when they're tired, and they do things like they cut through material and they're pulling too hard. You really want to you're better off doing multiple scores and letting the knife cut through the material. If you like trying to do it in one cut and you're pushing or you're pulling too hard, you can slip and then cut yourself. Or you never want to be cutting like into your hand or into your body. You usually want to be cutting away. Now, with when you're cutting kind of sheet material, you do have to kind of pull. You're not pulling towards you. You're kind of pulling down, and don't try to cut too much. Let the knife cut for you. Okay, so the way I like to think about it is just you want to make sure that you're lined up, and then you want to get your hand out of the way and just multiple passes. So that's one. Oops. Two. Three. Usually like four passes will, oops, I need one more, looks like. So one, there, so it popped off. Okay, so also when you're making these cuts, you shouldn't be coming down to the end of your cut and going like that. You just want to, you're kind of pressing firmly, not hard, and letting the knife cut, and then you come to the end and you're done. I think people kind of have a tendency to kind of want to follow through, and that's where it gets dangerous. I'm also, rather than cutting like this, I'm cutting kind of off to the side, okay, so I can kind of really make sure that, there's a path that I'm cutting that's away from my body. I do need to secure the ruler with my hand, okay, but you just want to kind of hold this in a way where you don't want to be kind of like cutting like this, okay, into your finger or something. You want to make sure and hold this so that your fingers are away from the material. This does need to be secure, but that is very important. So key thing, always, we only gave you one blade in this class because I think that's enough to be able to cut your box. You also will use this in some cases to cut, you can cut some material off of your mold, off of the silicone rubber, but they do sell replacement blades for these. If for some reason you don't have a blade, or your blade is super dull and you've kind of broken it off several times, then you can get replacement blades from Home Depot and Lowe's. It's an Olfa blade. All of these 18 millimeter box cutters have this same kind of size blade, so it doesn't have to be Olfa. Olfa is really kind of one of the best, but you can get more replacement blades. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say right now about that, and